Well, it looks like everybody doesn't want to hear me today. They all disappeared. That's okay. Thanks, Martha. I asked Martha when she came in. Martha's from Howard County, and the latest lottery for $327 million was won in Howard County, and I asked her if it was her. I want her to adopt me if it was. Before I get started, I have to tell you, I'm going to teach you something new today about never say never. Years ago, someone asked me if I was going to quit smoking, and I said never. It's been 12 years I've been smoke-free. The other day, I was working the polls, and I said, you'll never find me on the internet. I don't do Facebook, or I don't do anything like this. You'll never find me out there. Oh, I'll be darned. I want to use a different word, but I'm on YouTube. So if you've missed the June 2012 settlement presentation, go to YouTube. You'll find me. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is I'll never look like Twiggy. You think that'll work? Okay. A couple things I want to review about the abstract. The first thing is when you're completing those Lowit rate worksheets for those counties that have Lowit, please take extra care when you're entering in those net values, because sometimes your vendor printouts are not in the same order as that report. Just as a note to keep in mind, everything we do with taxing districts is in the abstract order. So when you're filling in values or anything, make sure you're matching up the taxing district with the dollar amounts you're putting in. The other thing on the abstract that I'm going to have to start sending these back because it's just so difficult, down in the TIF district area, when you're keying in that TIF district name, please include that 3-digit DLGF taxing district code. Because if you don't do that and you have a TIF district that's I-65 north of 500 east, I don't know what taxing district that is, and I really can't verify what rates you have. So in the spring when we start doing abstracts again, I will start sending those back if that taxing district code's not in there. The other thing that it was kind of new for y'all this year, and I went ahead and done some of them for you, but for referendum funds that were payable in 2012 or post-09, TIF annexations that happened after the creation of the TIF district, and for fire districts that were established after June 1, 1992, TIF is not eligible to receive any of those dollars. So on the abstract, we have to reduce the TIF rate by those fund rates, and we have to enter in those fund rates into the abstract. Now, there is a section in the abstract manual that gives you that, but if you need help doing that, give me a call, because that's something I need to get you guys to do that just takes a little bit more off my plate if I train you on how to do that yourselves. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to go back real quick. To reduce the TIF rate, you're going to reduce it in Section 4, Column 25, but then down on the TIF districts lines in the abstract, in the particular fund column, like say for the post-09 referendum fund, you would drop down to the TIF district line and enter in that rate for that fund. So the total rate in the TIF district will still be the total taxing district rate. It's just that TIF's not going to get the full amount now. They're only going to get a portion, and be the portion less those 3 types of rates. The other thing on your abstract, and I only found some of these because of the way we text some things, but you still need to make sure that when you're keying in to our spreadsheet from your vendor worksheets, not only do you make sure that the total on the grand total line matches back to your vendor worksheet, but the total columns for each taxing district line, you need to verify those are correct as well. I'm finding things are being put in the wrong line, which throws off that district line total. The way I've caught most of those is by when we review our circuit breakers. We can tell if that district is eligible for a circuit breaker credit or not, and I have found where There's circuit breaker in a district that doesn't qualify for that. So please make sure you're balancing your columns down and your rows across. Now, the other thing about your abstract is the only place you'll see negatives other than in the review area is in section 1, column 17, and section 1B, column 28 on the TIF district lines, because remember, you enter those in as negatives. Okay. Any real questions on abstract real quick before I go on? All right, June settlement. Our instructions are out on the website. Please read those. They really have not changed from the prior year at all. They're still pretty much the same. The forms are now out on the FTP site. All your settlement forms are out there. That would be everything from the 105 to your 17 TC if you're going to do refunds, your recon sheet, and so forth. Now, the circuit breaker rate worksheets, as Dan mentioned, were emailed to you. If you do want that in Excel format, just send me an email and I'll be glad to send it to you. I know, Nick, in Allen County, you live by that one. Nick just loves that Excel worksheet. And the forms we put out on the FTP site, you've got to use, unless your vendor has a form that we have approved, okay? But when you submit the 105 to us, it has to be on the Excel worksheet that I send, or unless your vendor provides one that's identical to that, okay? It has to be filled out because we have formulas in there that we check, and it saves us a lot of checking time and adding things up manually. When you're getting ready to do your settlement, you need to make sure you give the treasurer at least 5/12, if not 1/2 of the abstract amount for the seat at homestead, co at homestead, your low at Cadget or co at PTRC, your low at Cadget or co at homestead, and or the low at Cadget or co at qualified res. That has to be in the settlement because the treasurer needs that ahead of time so they can certify that money back to you so you can apportion it to the units. Again, the 2008 delinquent tax worksheet's no longer a required form, but if you still want to do it and want to continue to use it, you will need to contact me or Fred to get that sent to you because I did not provide that on the FTP site. The excise allocation worksheet, it will still apply to this settlement and all future settlements. If you do have annexed areas, and I did not get them on that excise allocation worksheet, you need to let me know so I can update your worksheet and send it back to you. Now, on the 105 Section A form, it's the same as last year. Line 4 is going to be your refunds. Line 5 is the delinquent penalties if they're applicable. Line 6 is your late payment penalties on special assessments collected. Note, line 6, if you're putting it in there for late assessment penalties, you have to put it in as a negative because we want to increase the apportionment. And line 7 is any other adjustments, whether it be positive or negative. If it goes in as a positive, you're reducing the apportionment. If it goes in as a negative, you're increasing. Tax refunds. Now, they can be deducted at the June settlement. However, it's not required. But if you do tax refunds, make sure that in December, you're only including the refunds that were not included in the June settlement. And one note, which this we're going to start seeing a lot of, is that the last year that the state provided, state PTRC and state homestead, was the 2007 pay 2008 tax year. You shouldn't have any of those. If you do, it's going to be a rare occasion. So it should be starting to get easier for some of the counties that don't have any of the lowest stuff to reconcile your taxes as far as those types of credits. Your late payment penalties, again, it's going to be out there this year. It doesn't include the conservancy districts or the tax or the ditch assessments. Late payment penalties, the treasurer's going to receipt that money into their other sources of their cash book, and they're going to certify it on the 49TC and other collections. But they're also going to include it on Section 3 of the 49TC because you need that district breakdown, and that's where they'll be putting the district breakdown. Now, if they're putting it in by like such and such weed assessment or such and such lien, you can't have it that way. And the district name will copy over automatically for them to use. So they really need to put those late assessment penalties on Section 3 in the taxing district. I need to do that one. Okay, excise tax, again, this has been going on for a couple years now, that the cutoff date, most of you have changed your cutoff dates to April and to September, April being for the June settlement, September being for the December settlement. The reason why we suggested doing this is because of that 14-day lag time the BMV has with getting the money to you. The other thing you want to make sure you remember to include on your excise allocation worksheet this year I'm bad about keeping up with this. Okay. Is you all had to sit and go through this thing of the 55 cents per registration and putting it in the proper taxing district. That money has to go on the excise allocation worksheet. And it's put in there, and then it's spread, and it's apportioned with your regular excise during settlement. There's nothing special you need to do, just make sure you include it. Lowit levy-freeze counties, you got to make sure you include the equivalency rate on your excise apportionment rates when you're doing settlement. That Lowit equivalency only goes on your excise distribution rates. It does not go on your property tax. There's a county checklist available on the FTP site. Go ahead and use it to make sure that you've covered everything you need to before you send the settlement in for approval. And at settlement time, I am requiring your distribution rates listing, especially now with circuit breaker. But please, if you get those done ahead of time, and to help speed up some of the settlement approval process, because it does take me a while, if you've got your distribution rates in, please go ahead and send me your distribution rates listing so I can check those ahead of time, and I'll get it marked that you have it filed and I went ahead and approved it. If you don't get it to me ahead of time, that's fine. Just go ahead and send it in with your settlement, but I'm trying to think of ways to help speed up our process a little bit, and if I can get that out of the way ahead of time, that would be great. The deadline for settlement is 51 days. You're all quite familiar with this, and if you don't get your settlement out to units within 51 days, you're going to have to pay interest. And on that slide gives you the formulas on to calculate that interest. Your settlement fines and fees are due June 30th, whether your settlement has been filed with our office or not. If you're filing your settlement prior to June 30th, then we want your May 31st balances. If you are filing your settlement prior to May 31st, then we want your April balances. Remittances due the state, we'll need those before we give final approval and before we will print and mail your settlement worksheet, final approval being that final approval letter. And the money that we need is the allocation money, any state, PTRC, or homestead, and the state share of delinquent taxes, the 2008 and prior taxes, if you are doing that. Fines and fees, or the normal fines and fees, and Fred went over some of those earlier. They're all listed in the next couple of slides. I'm not going to read every one of those. But the one thing that I did want to go over and make sure we're still having several counties that are not splitting these funds out the way they need to when they're collecting these fees. For example, your sales disclosure fee, half of it's to go to the county sales disclosure fund, half of it's to go to the state. Okay, some of you are still putting it in the same fund and just taking half the fund amount. Well, half the fund amount isn't right once you send in half, and then you put more in, you take half the fund amount again, you're taking county money at that point. So I have broken down on these slides what funds you need to have set up for these fees that you're remitting to the state. Now, if you have any questions on the breakdown of those funds, just give me a call and we can go over those individually. Now, the one note that I want to mention is that the 1% of the civil penalty on ineligible homesteads that you're quietusing into the DLGF property tax fund, you say, well, I've just got this settlement. How do I, it's past the May 31st balance. Go ahead and put them into the fund and distribute those in December. Remit those to us in December. When you're ready to send in your settlement, I need our 105 form, the 49 TC, the 17 TC if you're doing refunds, your excise allocation worksheet, your excise reconciliation worksheet, and your 2008 and prior if you're doing that. Now, when you're sending in those forms, make sure you copy all three of us. That way we can put you in rotation and get those checked. Again, please use the county checklist to go through your settlement. And again, as always, we review those in the order in which they were received. And if we kick yours back, you go back to the bottom of the list. So please use the checklist. That will prevent some of those. Complete Section C. We have a few counties that are not completing Section C on the settlement form. Please do that. The other form that is still kind of new to everybody is our quietus worksheet. Now, you don't need to submit that to get approval on your settlement because 9 times out of 10, you're going to want approval on your settlement so you know how to fill out the quietus worksheet properly. So go ahead and send in your settlement forms, but you don't have to do the quietus worksheet until I give approval or pre-approval on the settlement. Then before I can go any further, you'll need to submit that quietus worksheet. Some of you do have vendors that have created the quietus worksheet. We will take that as well. That is not an issue because it looks just like ours. The quietus worksheet is good because it will let us know if you're in balance with the treasurer's cash or not. Okay, any questions on June settlement? Miscellaneous reminders. FIT distribution. How many are wondering where their FIT distribution is? Remember, it changed, and it was in Dan's December memo that distribution has now changed to June 1 and December 1. Okay? So refer back to that December memo. It gives you the state statute that changed that, or the House Enrolled Act. I can't remember which it is. Which is it, Dan? What changed the FIT distribution? Was that a House Enrolled Act or was it a bill? Okay. 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 When you're doing your FIT, you have to use your load equivalency rates if it's applicable to you. Do not use circuit breaker rates on your FIT distribution. CVET, it was distributed May 1st, and it and FIT must be distributed to the units by June 30th. Counties who have adopted, again, low levy freeze, you're going to use that with your CVET rates. Again, circuit breaker rates are not applicable to CVET. Revenue estimates. We'll notify you by email when the 2015 budget revenue estimate formulas have been placed on our website. Those would be your cigarette tax, ABC gallonage, MVH local road and street, MVH 1 and 2, and the calculations of the estimates for the 2014, August 2014 and 15 riverboat wagering tax revenue sharing distribution. The $33 million distributed will be done by August 15th to those counties who do not have a riverboat. The amount of the distribution is going to be the same as 2013. Again, here's all of our email addresses for information if you have questions. One correction to the office information form I need to do is Fred's hours are 7:30 to 4, and I have 7 to 4 on there. The other thing I want to mention is, I'm going to refer back to Fred's presentation real quick. When you're doing your deposits ACH to the state and you're not going to do checks, please email the forms to us, the fines and fees forms. If it's judge's supplemental, email the judge's supplemental forms, because we need to be able to identify the money that you're putting into our bank, and it would be mute to mail those forms if you sent us the money by direct deposit. So scanning and emailing forms is a great way to communicate with us. Any questions?